At the end of part 1 of this series, I left behind Finland, and with it the most magical place I've ever been to on Earth. As I sat on the bus taking us out of the country, I remember thinking to myself, surely this cannot be matched, but I was happy to be proven wrong. Because I slept through most of the journey, I don't have much recollection of the bus ride that took us from Levi, along the Finland-Sweden border, up to the very corner of the country, where we changed to another bus that would take us into Norway. But I could tell when we reached Norway, because the pitch-black darkness around us began to fill with the looming forms of peaked mountains that Norway is famous for. And I distinctly remember the moment we reached Tromso, because the previously dark landscape began to be dotted by the bright yellow lights of the city's houses, nestled at the foot of Storsteinen Mountain and around the Tromsø river. At that point, it was too dark to make out what the architecture of the houses themselves looked like, so this remained a mystery to uncover with the daylight of the next day. But in fact, it was still dark when we woke up early the next morning, because it wasn't yet time to explore the city. Rather, our time in Norway was starting off with a whale-watching cruise that departed from the dock nearby where we were staying at Clarion Edge Hotel.
So the Svolvær Island, the area around there is usually where we can find whales at this time of the year.
As we sat below deck enjoying minestrone soup, the guides explained in a thick Norwegian accent the plan to sail to the waters nearby a small island called Svolvær, where humpback and orca whales had been coming to feed on herring for the past few years, leading the tour guides to establish a boat tour here. The whales were only expected to use this route for a few more years before drifting further north, so they had to have been quite opportunistic to make the most of this period, but it seemed to be paying off as the boat tour was fully booked out. The guides also explained to us that there was never a guarantee of seeing the whales, given that all we can do is attempt to predict their patterns of behaviour for the day, and unlike some other tours, if we did spot whales, this boat would not go up too close to them so as not to disturb them, but would instead turn off all its motors, and it would be up to the whales to approach if they wanted. Like in Lapland, there was only a short period of daylight to make the most of, given our latitude within the Arctic Circle, and so most of the journey to Svolvær took place under moonlight, not that this view was anything to complain about.
Style someday, old dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Two drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. We're after the same rainbow's end, waiting round the bend. Very friend, moon, river, and me.
As daylight began to creep in, we were able to make out the shapes of little red houses on some of the islands for the people who somehow managed to live there. And we also started to see seabirds flying in the sky, which was perhaps a sign that we were getting close to the feeding spots. And then right on cue, the captain announced over the PA that some whales had been spotted, a pod of orcas and a couple of humpback whales.
Towards our left side. orcas very close at our 1 o'clock on the right side. And there's the humpback at 12 o'clock, just right next to our sister.
Wow. As previously stated, our boat then shut its motor off to avoid disturbing the whales, and we watched at first as some other tour groups and smaller boats continued to approach closer and closer to the whales, while we lingered behind. But on this occasion, our boat's philosophy seemed to pay off, as beyond our wildest dreams, the 2 humpback whales decided to come right up to our stationary boat and treat us to a show that even the captain said he'd never seen before. On the way back, we were treated to yet another show, this time in the sky. At the dock, when looking across the harbour, we could make out a small house atop the mountain, with a cable car track ascending to it. This was in fact our next stop for later that night. Fjellheisen is a cable car that takes you to the top of Storsteinen Mountain, where you can get the best views of the city of Tromso. The next day, we finally got to take in the city of Tromso in proper light, with the iconic pyramidal structure of the Arctic Cathedral dominating the landscape. The main street of Tromso, Storgata, was lit up for Christmas and New Year, and had plenty of options for shopping for souvenirs and clothing. Where Finland had Moomin and Santa Claus in all its souvenir stores, Norway seemed to pride itself on its trolls, an important part of Nordic folklore. We also visited the Polar Museum, which had several exhibits dedicated to Norway and Svalbard's hunting history, as well as legendary explorers such as Roald Amundsen and Fridtjof Nansen aboard the ship Flam. We also had a brief stop at an info centre about fish farms, and then visited Polaria, the most northerly aquarium in the entire world. Its exhibits were all dedicated to Arctic marine life, so I didn't recognise many of the fish, but there were some interesting characters, such as these guys who kept sitting on top of the rock, and this guy over here.
Whoa! It's like somewhat sticky. What the? Look. Touch it and watch it move. Like it moves. Saying hello. Hello.
But what Polaria is most famous for are its bearded and harbour seals. On this occasion we were treated to a show by the two bearded seals, Bella and Misa.
Hello.
In 2024, we are going to expand Polaria. The seals will have 3 feet. And the best thing I think is that I will be outside. Yeah, so we've been waiting for years.
Да.
Helfen sich, also eine Übung machen, so dass sie auf dem Rücken liegen, in seine Hände. Und das ist
For our last night in Tromso, we heard that the forecast was promising for aurora, so we decided to try our luck at Pressvannet Lake, located at the highest point of the city. The rest of my family took a bus, but I wanted to have a walk through the residential streets of the city, and so I set off on a half-hour walk on my own. Seeing all of the shops and boutiques on Storgata nicely lit up at night made it clear why Tromso was also known as the Paris of the North.
I want more peaked house. As well as the floor plans. The architecture is still somewhat box-like, but definitely peaked houses everywhere. And they have colourful wooden planks, which are apparently there's some sort of style of building called Empire style, which apparently is found in Tromso. a lot. Yeah, wooden planks instead of the brick or concrete that was in Helsinki. Let's go just skiing. You're here. So I'm walking to Pressvannet Lake and I see this big streak across the sky, which is there's already a northern light, but I can't really stop to take photos because I have to meet my family there.
det gro der vi bygger og bor. Guds fred over dyrene på båsen og i frossen og karrig jord. Du ser oss i mørketidslandet. Du signer med evige ord. Husene og fjellet og vannet og folket som lever her nå.
In order to get to our next destination, we had to take a flight into the connecting city of Bodø and then another one to Svolvær, the largest city within the Lofoten Peninsula. But what looked to be just time spent in transit actually turned out to be an experience in itself, as we boarded a tiny aircraft which had a couple of locals and no other tourists, so that we each had a row to ourselves. The plane then proceeded to land and take off at multiple other small islands, dropping off or picking up more locals each time, much like a bus stop, providing us with remarkable views out the window. The one drawback of this was that every time we landed, we had to listen to the loud roar of the engines again.
Og vi gikk opp og ned. Vi gikk så mye som var med oss, sett oss fri, som lærte oss å sykle uten hender, som visste hvor vi kom ifra og hvor vi gikk forbi når vi var klar for hemmelige strender.
The Lofoten Peninsula in summer has become an increasingly viral destination for hiking and water sports, but now, in the middle of winter, there was hardly a tourist around. Traditionally, the winter season was when the villages of the peninsula would attract fishermen, hoping to profit off the Norwegian Arctic cod that spawn off the coast, though the industry has also quietened down over recent years.
Han hørte ikke musikken der som snudde om på alt.
Because of how few people were living here, with Svolvær having the largest population of 4,000, the only way to get around was by rental car. And so once we had finished exploring Svolvær for the day, we set off on a road trip to the nearby town of Henningsvær.
Og satte sine sanger rett i blodet og tok oss ut av gata og inn i andre rom enn de som var i barndommens kommode. Husker disse netter når det skulle ha vært mørkt. Jeg elsker dette lyset som sommer og går den samme gata ubehjelpelig berørt og lar det bare komme det som kom.
Henningsvær is a small fishing village with a population of only about 500 people. But it's famous for its football pitch, which is often listed as one of the most beautiful or unique football pitches in the world due to its precarious location.
Gutta kan nok slutte å prate så mye, da blir det ikke noe løye. Prat heller om verdenskrise, jeg synes det er mye viktigere gutter. Jeg lyng og alle vet det, jeg han så du kan se på TV, så til og med bra ut når jeg spiser. Jeg synes det er mye riktigere. Fjögo jo!
But with daylight running out, it was time to head back to Svolvær via a quick stop at Rorvikstranda.
One night, a few moons ago, I saw flags of what could have been lights, but
but it might just have been you passing by unbeknownst to me. Life is emotionally abusive, and time can't stop me quite like you did. And my flight was awful, thanks for asking. I'm unglued thanks to you. And it's like snow at the beach, weird but it was beautiful. Flying in a dream, stars by the pocketful. You wanting me tonight feels impossible, but it's coming down, no sound, it's all around. Like snow on the beach, like snow on the beach, like snow on the beach, like snow.
A nice scenery of the tricky trip. This beautiful place, fishing village.
Det ikke alltid det går sånn som du hadde tenkt. Det ikke alltid du når den ferga du kunne ha trengt. Du ser bare lysen der ute.
Reine is known for being one of the most picturesque fishing villages of the Lofoten Peninsula. But when we were there in winter, there was only one restaurant open, and the owners even made a point that even they would normally be closed, but only decided to open so that the tourists who were there wouldn't starve.
Du nord I landet da? Har du mer enn ei ferge å miste? Du ikke den første som hun går ifra, og du blir ikke heller den siste. Du nord I landet da? Du nord I landet da?
To me, the following photos of the even smaller fishing village of Hamnøy encapsulate the essence of Lofoten, with its traditional red fishing houses rendered against the backdrop of a remote and rugged mountainous landscape.
Natta spiser dagen din, og blir visst aldri møtt. Himmelen har ikke nordlys, stjernen har begynt for seg selv. Selv seg I alle butikkene, og du ser ingen stjerne å få. Du nord I landet da? Skal du bare la mørket råde? For en kveld trekkes teppet fra, og det kommer et lys av Guds nåde. Du nord I landet da? Du nord I landet da?
These racks, which could be found everywhere in Lofoten, were used for drying Arctic cod and turning them into stockfish, and in a different season would have filled the air with a fishy smell. But as of right now, there were no fish to be dried, and it was time for us to bid farewell to Lofoten. Our next destination was Bergen, the second largest city in Norway. This was a city that had been on my dad's bucket list for quite some time, mainly because of Bryggen, the historic harbour district, which had been established as a wharf for the Hanseatic League back in the 12th century, a powerful merchant guild originating from Germany, but dominating trade throughout northern Europe.
Jeg sitter ned på berget og ser utover havet, en solskinnsdag I ferien min. De sommer skal jeg surfe, stå på vannski og bade. Ja, denne ferien tror jeg blir fin. Forbi meg suser Andersen I sin cabin cruiser med alle sine venner ombord. Det kryr av jenter der I gjennomsiktige bluser som Andersen ble kjent med I fjor. Jeg titter på jenter, jeg har solbriller på, så ingen riktig ser hvor jeg ser. Den peneste av jentene tar av seg sin BH og snur seg imot meg og sier: Du sier meg, har du det bra? Jo, takk skal du ha. Jeg har det bedre enn de fleste her til stede. Jeg smiler hver dag fordi jeg er glad. Det så fint å leve, si meg, kan du ikke se det? Og blir du med og lyser etter krabber? For krabber det beste jeg vet. Vi reiser ut I båten min, en hvit romedille. Hun sier hun glad at jeg spurte. Vi finner oss en holme, det fredelig og stille. Jeg sier jeg glad at jeg turte. Så sitter vi og koser oss til solen går ned og månen atter titter frem. Vi lyser etter krabber helt til klokka blir 4. Fornøyde vi vender hjem. Hun sier takk for I dag, jeg har hatt det så bra. Det har vært så gøy å være sammen med deg, kjære. Jeg gleder meg til middag klokka 2 I morgen. Vi har hatt det så fint, kanskje det mer I gjerde. Jeg dekker på med lys og røde roser og åpner en bøvklikår. Nå har jeg det bra, og takk skal du ha. Jeg har det bedre enn de fleste her til stede. Jeg smiler hver dag fordi jeg glad. Det så fint å leve selv om stolbena skjeve. Jeg dekker på med lys og røde roser og venter på at hun skal ringe på.
Bergen is a city famous for its music, being the hometown of artists such as Alan Walker as well as Edvard Grieg, who wrote In the Hall of the Mountain King. But also for its art, and so we took the time to visit some museums, which depicted some of Norway's maritime history, including its Viking and also Hanseatic League days, and also a number of other artworks. Edvard Munch, Norway's most famous painter, had a number of paintings on display here, although his most famous piece, The Scream, was on display in Oslo instead. Next, we took the Flåm funicular to the top of Mount Flåm, a vantage point high above the city.
misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day to find our love.
Mount Flåm also contained a troll forest, with a number of playgrounds that were haunted by the presence of several creepy statues and characters.
On the height, the winds were moaning in the night. The fire was red, it flaming spread. The trees like torches blazed with light.
Any other mirrors?
Oh! But our time in Bergen was short, and the next day it was already time to embark on one of the most famous single-day tours in Norway, the Norway in a Nutshell tour. The tour starts with a commercial train to Voss and then a short bus to Gudvangen, and then a cruise through Nærøyfjord, a branch of Sognefjord, the deepest and longest fjord in the country. This is then followed by a ride on the Flåm Railway through the Flamsdalen Valley, a scenic route which includes some of the steepest segments of railway in all of Europe. Finally, once you reach Myrdal, the tour ends with a commercial train all the way to Oslo, the capital city of Norway.
kan jeg se Flåm kirke som sto. Fotostopp ved Kjosfossen, plattform til venstre.
By the time we boarded the train from Myrdal to Oslo, it was already 5:30 in the evening. And so the last 5-hour segment of the Norway in a Nutshell tour took place in darkness. We finally arrived in Oslo at about 10:30 p.m, and so we rushed back to the hotel to get some rest ahead of our last day in Norway. After 2 weeks of exhilarating adventure through Finland, Estonia and Norway, it was time to end our trip with a peaceful day in Oslo, the capital of Norway.
Oh, nice fish.
And so on reflection, as we walked along the harbour for our last few hours in Norway before our flight back home, both countries, Finland and Norway, now held a special place in my heart. Finland had perhaps felt the more magical, warm and cosy of the two, but Norway's rugged themes of Viking conquest and Arctic exploration, and the way that people were able to actually live amongst all the harsh mountains that I was only touring through, were equally impressive in their own way.